Remember it vividly, floor 10, doors open. I open up my arms to give this guy a hug. I still haven't said anything. He pulls back. He goes, "Hey man, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you have a family. I don't even know your name, but if you do have a family, just hold them really close because you never know when it's going to be their last day." So that's October of 2022. So I go from negative bank balance to a couple of months later, overnight, boom, rich. It's every founder's dream. Like I had made it. And so exactly 1 month later, it's the biggest day of my professional life up to this point. I'm in New York City. We're getting ready to go on CNBC. I wake up that morning. I get a phone call from my mother-in-law, and she said, "Something's happened to Brooklyn," who's my wife, her daughter. She's in an ambulance being rushed to the hospital. And I'm having all these emotions, like what has happened? And I'm getting text message updates from my father-in-law. Hey, they just found 2 liters of blood in her abdomen. 2 liters of blood means you can't function. You're going to die, right? As the plane's descending, I get a message that says something to the effect of, "Brace yourself. It doesn't look like she's going to make it." So the plane lands like you'd see in the movies. I'm sprinting through the airport, get my Uber, go to her room. Audibly, the first thing I realize is the heart rate monitor is still going. And so I just felt like overwhelmed with gratitude for one more moment, right? And that one moment turns into one night, lots of miracles, another night, a third night. She makes it through this experience. But going through that, I did years of self-reflection in a matter of days, just thinking about what my life is going to be like, and have I been a good husband, been a good father? Are my priorities in line? And the conclusion I made is no to all of that. And something's got to change because life is fragile. And in an instant, it can be taken from you.
Tyler Hall, welcome to the second episode of the Generational Health Podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I think like we talked a little bit about this, like how are we going to introduce me? And man, I've been through some experiences that have led me to like having an incredibly low tolerance for surface level discussions. Mm-hmm. And I think entrepreneurs and men in business, they tend to get trapped where their work becomes their identity. And so like if you think about the last 4 or 5 times that you met a stranger at some sort of networking related event, right? Like, how does that early conversation go? It's like, "Hey man, what do you do?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I'm a consultant." And they're, "What are you doing?" Like, "I'm an entrepreneur and I run a business." And it's like, that conversation to me doesn't resonate at all. And so instead of asking people what they do, I just say, "Who are you?" And it catches people off guard. But they'll be like, "You mean like, what do I do?" And I'm like, "No, like, who are you?" And most people can't answer the question. So I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm a child of God with potential beyond human imagination. I'm a father of 4 sacred children and a husband to a loving wife. I'm a machine. My habits and routines can't be broken. I'm a man of my word. I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm a doer. Watch my feet, not my lips. I'm a long game player, not distracted by instant gratification. I'm an acceptor of people. My ability to judge does not exist. I lift others and always bring good energy. I don't take things personally because I know who I am, full of love for my fellow man, even-tempered because I stay present. A calm and kind man, but not to be taken lightly. My sword is sheathed and will only be used if absolutely necessary. Called to change the lives of millions of men through my example. So that's who I am.
Wow. I was not expecting that at all. That's awesome. It actually reminded me of a church leader back in 2003 who looked at a group of us and asked us that same question. He said, "Who are you?" And we kind of looked up at him and answered, "Well, I'm a this, or I'm a that, or I'm a 19-year-old boy, or I'm a friend, I'm a son, I'm a whatever." And he goes, "No, but who are you really?" And okay, well, I'm a child of God. I'm an eternal being. Then it gets more spiritual. And and then he looks at us again. And he's just like, "Who are you really?" And it makes you really think about that.
Yeah,
that was a really, really cool response. Makes me want to do something like that for myself. Yeah. And I can attest personally to a lot of those things with you. It's been fun getting to know you, and I think I met you it's probably 11 years ago now. And you're a good dude, man. And I can tell that you care about people and that you do have a selfless nature about yourself. So anyway, I appreciate you sharing that.
You're welcome.
I want to do something similar. So that's cool.
You're welcome.
So we know who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey? I asked that because as part of the Generational Health Podcast, we have a lot of health related topics that we're going to talk about on the podcast. But as a founder and CEO myself, I have a lot of interest in learning from other people that have gone through ups and downs of entrepreneurship and founding companies, things that they've learned, challenges they've experienced, the toll it takes on you personally, health, spiritual, mental, physical, your family, all that stuff is just so interesting to me. So I'd love to start by just getting to know a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey, where you started, and some of the things that you've worked on in the past few years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing I'll say about being an entrepreneur is I don't think it's for everybody. In fact, I think most people shouldn't start companies. Like people that follow me have heard me say this on multiple podcasts. It's probably the first piece of advice that I give aspiring entrepreneurs who say, I want to go build a company. The first thing I say is you probably shouldn't, right? And I think it takes you could make the debate is becoming an entrepreneur DNA related, or is it, can anybody go and learn how to do it? I actually think it's predominantly DNA. I think that entrepreneurs are actually wired from a bone level to be entrepreneurs. There's certain characteristics at a cellular level that entrepreneurs have. And I think most entrepreneurs actually have a screw or two loose in their head, especially serial entrepreneurs that go on to build more and more companies when the majority of them fail, right? That just doesn't rationally, if you think through that doesn't make sense. So, my experience is from a really young age, I was always fascinated by the deal. So that manifested early on as lemonade stands, going door to door selling trinkets to my neighbor friends, buying candy in bulk in junior high and selling it to kids at school, buying ice cream in bulk from the ice cream store and selling it to my friends when they came over. I mean, then it was in high school, it was Nixon watches. These were really popular when I was in high school. So I was buying them on eBay and I was flipping them to, people at school. And then I served in LDS mission. When I got home from my mission, really a big catalyst for me starting Drivably was an experience I had in college where I bought and sold cars. So the quick story goes like this. I get home, I had saved up $6,800 before my mission. It's all the money I had in my bank account. I go out, I buy a car. I spend all my money on this car. I'm working now full-time at KSL.com, which is a large classified sites in Utah. So all day, every day, I'm looking at their listings page. I end up selling that car a week later for $11,000, and I made $4,000 of profit. And I didn't really actually think a whole lot about it. Go out, still need transportation. I buy another car. I'm at work the next day, realize I got another great deal. I was great at negotiating. I listed, I make $2,000. And so before you know it, I had bought and sold, over the next year, I'd bought and sold about 100 cars. And so I was doing, multiple deals a week sort of thing. And got smart, built some software to sort of automate the searching of these vehicles and built my own little local kind of Kelley Blue Book pricing guide. And it was fairly technical growing up, and ended up licensing that software to a handful of dealers, then became an investor in a car dealership. So I'd buy here, pay here, independent car lot. I had all this money now because I'd flipped so many cars. I'd made a couple $100,000 as a 21-year-old full-time college student. And so I became an investor in a car dealership, learned that space really well, and then realized that this was like the biggest category that really wasn't tech enabled. And I was computer engineer, super into software development. And so I thought there's probably a lot of things that we could go solve here. So I spent the next 7 years at 2 early stage software businesses to kind of learn how to go and build at scale. The first one went public. This was a company called Domo. I was super early at Domo. And then I went to an early stage company called HireVue that sold to a private equity group for over $500 million. And so, I luckily joined 2 companies where I really got to learn a lot. And then at 27, this would have been 2008 or 28, I started my first company.
So really quick, you mentioned going and working for these companies as a DNA enabled entrepreneur, whether you knew it or not, like it was kind of ingrained in you from a young age, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Would you say your primary purpose, if I heard that correctly, in getting a normal 9-to-5 job was about education?
Yeah.
Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, 100%. And this was like not, my master plan. My older brother, who is an amazing entrepreneur, has built several companies as well, sort of carbon copy of me in a lot of ways. It was his advice, like, hey, if you really want to go build a company around this, and you want to do it like at scale, go meet my friend Josh. And he was friends with Josh James, who is the CEO and founder of Domo. And so, I thought it was like, go spend a couple years there. But I actually really enjoyed that startup environment. We raised almost $1 billion of venture funding at Domo. And so it was like, you couldn't spend the money fast enough. It's a fun culture to be a part of. And then HireVue, like, I felt like I didn't get enough like product exposure at Domo because I was pretty low level sales role there. At HireVue, I was now sort of in a leadership position, so I had a lot more exposure. Felt like that was the right next move, and did about a 3-year stint at each of those. And it was like, I would not have been in a position to go and build a software company without doing those, for sure. So it's one of the pieces of advice I give a lot of 20, 21-year-old. It's like, hey, first, like, go do the thing. So if you want to build a software company for carpet cleaning businesses, you should go clean carpets. If you want to build a software business for car dealerships, you should go sell cars. If you want to build a software company for, name the category, you should go do that thing first and really learn and understand what it's like to be your own customer. So I took it a step further. So after I went and did like my MBA at these 2 startups, I actually built a car dealership with my own money and like ground up, because I knew we were going to build software and sell it to car dealerships. So it would have been wiser and cheaper for me to just like go take a job at a car dealership. But like,
okay, so this is interesting. So Is this the auto hall?
Yeah.
Okay, so I remember the auto hall. So your sole purpose in starting auto hall was to build software.
100%.
Okay, I didn't know.
It was masked as a used car dealership.
Interesting.
So we actually had like developers in our dealership writing code, and like people would come in thinking they were like salespeople. Be like, hey, can you help me with this? And they were just like, no, I don't, I don't even know. Like,
right.
I have no idea what any of this business is. So, that was quite fun, and, sort of expensive R&D project. But again, like, what did that do? Well, it allowed me to really understand the way that my customer operated, like intimately. And I had skin in the game, right? And I could now speak the language. And when I walked into a customer, I could say, I've been in your shoes. I've been a car dealership. I owned my own car dealership, right? So it gave me like instant credibility coming into the industry.
That's awesome. So as you started the auto hall and you're going through this process of developing software, which is really difficult, especially when you have to rely on other people that are just super techies, software engineers and others. As you built that, you started to monetize it. what would you say would be like one of the biggest obstacles that you ran into while you were doing this?
It's like the idea that your thesis on what you should build is going to be right. That's true roughly 0% of the time. And so the thing that would have been smarter is, before we invested a bunch of funds in product development, it would have been much smarter to build a functioning prototype for 1/100th of the cost, and taken that to our customer, lots of them, and said, what would you do? Or is this something you would use? And if so, how much would you pay? And what would you do differently? And what do you like about this, right? So, we didn't do like enough customer journey type feedback in the beginning. There's a great methodology called the lean startup methodology. And the idea behind the lean startup methodology is, before you write a line of code, go build the thing in like a functioning prototype, take it to your customer, gather lots of feedback, and like make sure that there's like semblances of product market fit before you go build something and spend a bunch of money and time and effort in something that your customer at the end of the day is not going to want or pay for.
We've got a guy I work with, a marketer, who uses this analogy. If he listens to this, he's going to love that I'm bringing this up, but he has this analogy about building a hammer. And, a hammer is a tool that has a purpose. And sometimes people go out and they want to build a hammer that has like a golden handle on it. And maybe, it's like ruby encrusted and has all these bells and whistles. And you take it and you try to sell it. And you're like, well, that's not what I need. I just need a functioning hammer that's going to last a long time. So sometimes I think, to your point, people go out and they build these really beautiful, extravagant businesses, but it might not be fit for purpose for the potential customers you want to sell to. Yeah. So anyway, he uses that hammer analogy all the time. Sometimes you've got to like start small, basic, get out there, get feedback, and then you slowly add whatever you might need to that hammer. Maybe it's a different kind of wood, so it'll last a lot longer, a different kind of metal, or shape, or whatever it might be, so that it's fit for purpose and it's functional. So that's kind of what that reminded me of.
Yeah. I think I have ironically enough, I'm going to see if I can find this. I think I have like a lessons learned document. Let me see if I can find this. So I know for sure I have it somewhere, right? But like,
I'm curious as you were, so most businesses fail. You mentioned like, you see people that want to be entrepreneurs and generally talk them out of it because it's really instilled in you. But most businesses don't make it. And that's probably why you get a lot of people that shouldn't do it. But you're going at this new business. You've got this idea. You've built a lot. 6 years in like startup phase with other companies, learning and growing, and then you start your own thing. Were you ever concerned that this thing was going to fail? You mentioned it was expensive. You got R&D, a lot of money getting pumped into it. Were there moments you thought this wasn't going to work out? And if so, like, how did you work through that?
So one of our investor, in fact, our very first investor, I'll tell you this story and then I'll bring it full circle. This guy named Ulas Naik. He's the general partner, founding partner of Streamlined Capital. He's the most active angel investor in history. So he's written like now 500 checks. So you think about like the number, just like what's required to write one. He's written 500 checks. And, we had pitched 55 VCs and gotten 55 no's. And we were payroll away from being out of money. Like me and a friend had seeded the company. And we made a lot of mistakes and like investing way too much up front. Like if I could go back and do it over, one of the biggest lessons would be like, just take your time a little bit more. Like you think everything is so urgent as an entrepreneur. Like it's not. Like you have time. So just like take a deep breath.
It's hard to do.
And just take your time. It's
Yeah.
hard to do, right? Like you want to go fast. And so 55 pitches, 55 no's, that's becoming discouraging. I'm looking at our bank account. I'm getting ready to have to fire the whole team or shut the company down. I go to San Francisco. I have like 8 investor presentations in one day. It's like the most exhausting, because when you're pitching a VC, you have to just be locked in.
Mm-hmm.
And so like one meeting takes a lot of energy, but to do like 8 back-to-back in San Francisco, like
yep.
it's a lot. And so I had done like 6 meetings. It's getting late in the day. I do my 7th meeting. I sit down with Dan Rumanek from Streamline, and I do this presentation, and I totally bomb it. It's the worst. And I'm physically getting red and sweating and and I remember at one point he was like, "Hey, are you good? Like do you need to take some time, because I was so flustered."
Yeah.
I couldn't answer any question he was asking. He was drilling me on stuff, and it got kind of intense. And so meeting wraps, I'm like, "Hey dude, sorry to waste your time," basically. Right? He's like, "No, it's all good. Like, I actually found it pretty interesting." So he leaves. I go to my last meeting. It's my 8th meeting of the day. And I'm sitting there with a lovely VC named Grace. And I'm like right next door to Streamline's office. And I get a text from Dan, and he's like, "Ulas wants to meet in 5 minutes. Can you come back over here?" So I'm like, "Hey Grace, give me a minute. I'll be back probably soon. I'm so sorry. I got to go back to this meeting," right? So I leave that meeting. I go over there. There's Ulas, who like to me in this world, it's like meeting a celebrity. It's like meeting a professional athlete. You're just like, you see him for the first time. You're like, man, this guy's amazing. So we sit down. We spend 15 minutes. He asks a few questions about the business. He says, "Hey, will you just give us a minute?" So he asked me to leave the room. I leave the room. It's a glass conference room. And I'm like watching them chat for like 60 seconds. And he goes like this. He's like, "Come back in here." So I walk in, and he's like, "We're going to invest. We want to invest $750,000 at a $10 million cap, and we'll wire the funds tomorrow." And I was just like, "Are you sure?" Like, I think I almost talked him out of it. I'm like, "Really?
Wait a second. Yeah.
Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're really betting on you. Like we think that you're the guy to go and do something really interesting." And he goes, "We don't know auto that well. I don't actually really care about the categories. Like, we just think that you're somebody that's going to figure it out."
Wow.
I was like, wow, right? So like that moment changed everything for me. Because A, like now we had some capital. B, like he had really boosted my confidence. Like, yeah, I am the guy. I can go do this. And so fast forward like 2 years, I'm sitting down with Ulas, developed a really good relationship with him. And I go, "Ulas, you've made all these investments. Like, what are common traits of the best founders? Like, is there like 1 or 2 or 3 things that like really stand out?" And he goes, "Yeah, there are." And he said, "It's not what you're going to think it is. It's actually not the smartest founders or the most educated founders or the most strategic or the most whatever." He goes, "The founders that like the consistent one thing that the most successful founders have is their resilience." He said, "It's just guys that just don't quit." He goes, "Because the longer that you can survive in this game, the higher the probability that you're going to have a successful outcome." So he goes, "Some days, weeks, months, years are just about surviving. Just don't close the doors."
Wow.
And then we faced that. Like, we had multiple times where it was just like, gosh, it would be so easy to just send an email to the company and say, "Hey guys, this is everybody's last day. We're done." But we didn't. Like, COVID was like shortly after we had that conversation. And COVID, I thought it was over. We had to fire 80% of the staff. But it was like, I always just remembered, like, the reason they invested in me, the guy that I am is the guy that just like, when everybody else goes home and quits, like, I'm just going to like last one more day. and just keep it going. And then we had some good fortune and some luck and timing with COVID, and had a really successful outcome.
I think you brought up something that you and I have discussed in the past that a lot of people don't experience that work a 9-to-5 job. And that is the emotional roller coaster of being a founder, meaning that one day in a single 24-hour period, you might think that the world's coming to an end and this thing's not going to work. Every doubt creeps in. You might not have enough money. You start to doubt yourself, start to think, man, what was I thinking? There's no way. And then within like 2 minutes, you might get that phone call and all of a sudden you're thinking like, hell yeah, we're taking this thing to the moon. And you can experience that within a couple of hours. And it's the weirdest thing for me, coming from a space where I've always been an entrepreneur, but I've also been like a company person for, and primarily for education. My thought was, I'm going to do everything I can to learn as much as I can, because there's so much value in working for big companies. You can get a lot of or for startups, or for, just it's working for somebody else. There's a lot of value in that. But I had never experienced the emotional roller coaster of feeling like everything's going to crumble to we're going to the moon in such a short period of time. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like in that moment when you were sitting there, like, are you okay? Like your face is probably like bright red and you're embarrassed and you think you just screwed this thing up and you're probably feeling like we're not going to make payroll. I can't, to, hey, I believe in you. I don't really know anything about the company, but I believe in you. That probably instilled a ton of confidence in you. And it's kind of one of those feelings that unless you're in that kind of entrepreneurial founder stage, I don't know that many people experience that roller coaster of emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that I've described it, this analogy I think is brilliant for small brains. Okay. So like you've been to Disneyland?
I just went.
Okay. Space Mountain. You're familiar?
Yep. I actually didn't make Space Mountain this trip, but I've been there.
Yes. You've been to Space Mountain. Okay. So the idea of Space Mountain, for those who don't know, the 4 people out there who don't know, is it's the fastest ride at Disneyland, and it's like simulating flying through space at light speed, right? So you get on this ride, it's dark. And the first time you do Space Mountain, it like sucks. Like you're getting whipped around and like, whoa, holy, because you have no idea what's going on. It's pitch black and you're just zipping through this roller coaster. But then like, you're like, man, that kind of hurt. Like, oh, but gosh, I kind of want to go do that again. Right? So you jump on it again and you get on and you're like, I know at the very beginning here, like there's this dip and then this right turn. So I'm going to brace myself a little bit. And I know like in the middle, once you do this big one, it goes straight down. So I'm going to brace into that one too. And you do it again and you're like, man, that hurt, but not quite as bad. Like, I kind of like that, And then like, I want you to think about like the next time the lights come on, boom. And you can see every twist and turn. So now you're bracing with it and you get done. You're just like, it was the same roller coaster, but now I know every turn and I know every dip and I know when it's going to get fast and when it's going to pull back. I mean, that's entrepreneurship, right? So it's like, there's no other way to prepare for what that feeling is like than to build up the calluses and the repetition of like, this is just the way my life is now. And so every day, is going to be volatile and different. And there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be yeses, there's going to be nos. But you just like over time, you build up calluses and you flatten the curve of the roller coaster. So it doesn't feel like this anymore. Like this is still happening, but like in the middle, you're just kind of like, yeah, I've seen this all before. I don't get too high. I don't get too low. Because I know when we have a big win, like the next call is going to be that one. And when you build up that repetition as a founder, like that's just a skill like in life that I wish everybody could come to. And most don't, because their job doesn't, their day-to-day doesn't include those heart rate monitor looking highs and lows.
No, that's really good. So you have your company, they invest in you, COVID hits. what was kind of the silver lining with COVID? I think you mentioned you had to lay off a ton of people, but then you found some good fortune in that time frame. So what happened?
Yeah. So our main customer were car dealerships.
Mm-hmm.
Car dealerships were not considered essential businesses. You remember this term during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
So if you were a non-essential business, you got shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of lobbying took place. I mean, the car business is like the biggest mafia that exists, right? So there was a lot of lobbying that took place to change that ruling and then consider them essential businesses. And during the month or 6 weeks that they were shut down, every one of our customers canceled because they're like, we're probably dead. Like most of these car dealerships thought this is going to be the end of us. So they're slashing bills left and right. The first one to go was us. Then all of a sudden, they were given the essential business stamp of approval from the government. The government starts paying everybody these stipends. So people now have like cash all of a sudden. People can't spend that money, but hey, car dealerships are open. Maybe we should go buy a new car. Like we're kind of bored. Like let's go buy a new car. So all of a sudden you went from holy shit, like this whole industry is going to like collapse to like within weeks it being at an all-time high because you had an all-time high consumer demand for vehicles because everybody had money, and you had an all-time low supply of cars because manufacturers weren't manufacturing at the same rate that they were used to. Mm-hmm. Our business helped car dealerships buy vehicles from consumers to put on their lot and sell. That was the only place where you could buy cars was directly from consumers. And so we had this good fortune and timing that, you know, we made we actually during COVID fired the whole staff, got really lean. Porsche ended up being the saving grace. So they wrote a check the day after they closed their factory in Germany for the first time in history. They're writing a venture check for $500K into the company, or maybe $1 million. They ended up investing more over time, but so they wrote this check, and that gave us just enough breathing room to kind of get through this sketchy 6 weeks that felt like 6 years period of time. And then everything changed. We went and bought a company. We acquired a company during that time. We pivoted our entire business model. And we made some big bets, and those bets became true and paid off. And, a year later, we were having vertical growth, and we had a couple of companies inbound us, big public companies that wanted to buy the whole company. And so we ran a process, and about 6 months later, we sold the company.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations on Drivably. It was cool. We lived by each other during part of that, and then we moved, and I kind of followed you on social media a bit, and it's pretty hard to get to that phase. I don't know what the odds are, what the percentage of success is for someone to build a company from scratch and be able to exit like you did in the time frame that you all did. It's probably pretty low, would be my guess. There's probably not a lot of people that have accomplished that. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. But I've got to imagine, and this is where I want to shift gears a little bit. I've got to imagine that all of that success, growth, ups, downs, traveling, raising money, hiring, firing, came with a ton of stress. And we're the Generational Health Podcast, right? So this is where it kind of dips into that part on maybe the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental toll that takes on a person. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind diving into some of these demands and how those demands of growing your company personally affected you in those health aspects of your life.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's almost hard to describe how much you sacrifice and the price that you pay to be an entrepreneur and to build a company. And when I say entrepreneur, by the way, that term is thrown around way too loosely. Like I consider the term almost a sacred term. It's like actually real company builders.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big difference between a whatever guru online coach person and a real company builder, right? So let me just be very clear. But for the real company builders out there, it just takes a toll on everything, right? Like, and I didn't really see it until I was on the other side and had some time to reflect from a life experience that I went through and do some deep reflection and realize like, damn, dude, like it was rough. So like, here's some examples, right? Physical health. I mean, you're never eating enough. The food that you are eating is purely out of convenience. Rarely have time to exercise. And it's like, well, just make it a priority. It's like, yeah, it's not like, dude, when you have a gun to your head from 10 investors and you're trying to make payroll and the amount of down pressure that you take as a CEO of a company is crippling. So it's like, you're not even thinking about, maybe I should go to the gym today. You're just thinking about like, your employee's mom died and your biggest customer just canceled and a big VC just said they're going to invest. And there's so many things happening at the same time. You don't even have the mental capacity to really like think about self-care at all. I'm not thinking about how does my wife feel? That never crossed my mind. I'm not thinking about what are her needs? What are my children's needs? Like, am I a good father? Like, I'm not thinking about that. I'm only purely thinking about the success and health of the company.
So if you're not thinking about your wife's needs and you're not thinking about your kids and what they need during this time, how did that translate in the home? What impact did that have on you in the home?
I was so disconnected. Like I could be in the room, but I'm not there. That it didn't even occur to me that something was wrong in my marriage or with my family or with my finances or with my health or with my relationship with God. It just didn't occur to me. I was disconnected from reality. I was living in a different, alternate reality. And I think that there are components to that are required to be successful as an entrepreneur. But gosh, I look back and I go, man, I really regret those days.
So for people that are in it right now, just in the thick of it, they're in those moments right now. They're trying to focus on their employees and the funding and the this and the that, and they might be neglecting the very thing that is really motivating them to be successful. What advice would you have for that individual, knowing what you know now?
I mean, I think you have to constantly remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And you have to be, I think you also have to be really honest about that, right? Is it self-motivating? Is it pride? Is it ego? Is it money? And then really strip that back and go like, really, why are you doing this? I think the majority of entrepreneurs, especially men who have a family, would say, I'm doing this to improve my family's situation for generations. That's what I want. And if that's true, and you can consistently remind yourself of that, you have to just make it a priority, right? And so here's what I would say. If you think that you're noble for going to work for 10 or 12, 14 hours a day, like that's not noble. And by the way, if you think you're productive, I mean, there's been studies on brain capacity in a 24-hour period of time. Your brain is really only capable of like firing on all pistons for 4 or 5 hours in a 24-hour span of time. So like, why don't you just like make the time that you are working hyper efficient and hyper productive, and then carve out time to do self-care first, and second to pour into your relationship with God, your relationship with your spouse, or your relationship with your kids. Because if you don't, I was lucky that my wife was just the best wife ever. Like, I was just lucky. Our marriage shouldn't have lasted. No way. I was never there. I would make appearances, but I still wasn't like there, for years. So I just got lucky. But if you're listening out there, you're not going to get lucky, more than likely. Your wife will, at some point, there will be this spilling over, and they will leave if you do what I did. And your kids, you convince yourself that my kids are young. They're not going to remember this. They remember. My kids still tell me, like, I'm so glad you're like here with us now. And for so long you were so absent, and they were young, but they remember.
Yeah, man. It's the kids. Well, there's a lot here, but I even look at, as I was young and trying to grow in my company and just working my butt off, just trying to the corporate ladder, the rat race, just, commuting and all of that stuff, just being gone a lot, years of doing that, traveling. Sometimes you don't know how bad things are, right? And there's these wake up call moments where it happens, it's going to catch up. And like you, I also have an amazing wife, and, fortunate that we communicate with each other a lot better now than we used to. But man, there was a time where I thought things were great. I thought things were normal. I thought I was just out there doing my job as a provider and working hard and all those things. And one night she woke me up middle of the night, and it was a very defining moment in our marriage. And she just looked at me and she's just like, is this what you want? Like, is this as good as it's going to get? Are you happy? She clearly wasn't. There was something missing. I wasn't present. I wasn't there. Like, maybe I made appearances, like you said, but making an appearance and being present are two totally different things. And, it's, you get so distracted, not on purpose, not because you don't love that individual and that you want to give them everything, right? The most important thing to me in my life, and I've told her this many times, is her. That's the most important thing to me, is our marriage. And so for me, it was eye-opening at how derailed a marriage can get without even knowing it, And I think that for real entrepreneurs, or for those that are in really demanding jobs, it's very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to allow that to derail without even knowing it. And that's dangerous. Yeah. Because it can creep up fast. And so, again, also fortunate myself that I probably didn't get to a point where you did, where I was maybe as far off. I wasn't in it. I wasn't a founder. I wasn't in running my own company at that time. And so, but I look back and I'm super grateful that happened when it did. And, because it's been a huge blessing for our family, and for our marriage, to have gone kind of through that moment. Yeah. And I've noticed now, being a founder of Hiva Health is how demanding this gets. And that's why I asked you the question about how, what kind of a toll it takes on you personally, from a mental, physical, emotional, how that gets reflected in your home. And it's hard not to be distracted, man. It's like the business is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week business. It doesn't stop. Our brains don't stop thinking about the problems. It never ends. It's always busy. You're never going to put out one fire and another one's not going to pop up somewhere. Yeah. So you've got to find those moments in that time to be ultra present when you're available for your family. Yeah. And that's tricky. It's a tricky thing to do. And I feel for busy men that are trying really hard to be providers for their families, and they're trying to do the right things. But they might fall short in balancing that really important piece, the piece that really is, at least for me, the driving force behind everything I do.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, sometimes I think we just get so caught up in it that we don't realize how far off we can get. So I hope those that are busy and those that are, whether they're entrepreneurs or not, I mean, there's so many busy working individuals that are just getting up every day, just grinding, trying to make, trying to be able to pay their rent or pay their mortgage or whatever it is, that they don't lose sight of what's really most important. And that's those relationships, whether it's a spouse or a partner or kids or whatever else. Like, that is by far the most important thing. It's not, we're not going to take any money with us when we die,
Yeah.
So anyway, I appreciate you telling us about that. And I know that you, not only from a relationship standpoint, with being an entrepreneur and maybe neglecting some of the duties and responsibilities at home, but after you sold Drivably, I mean, you guys experienced some additional, like, really difficult times. And would love, I know you've shared this before, but I mean, whatever you'd be willing to open up and talk to me about, would love to hear a little bit about some of the challenges that you as a family faced after you exited Drivably, and what you learned from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, to kind of tee this up, I remember getting really sick. So it's now late summer of 2022. I'm really sick. I'm in the middle of this transaction, this company that was looking at buying us. And, my wife and I, for the previous weeks, have been planning out our life. Like, man, our life's going to be so different. Here's all the things we're going to go do. We're going to go travel. We're going to buy this house. We're going to, and the deal was, from my mind, as good as done. Mm-hmm. And great learning. Deal's never done until it's done, right? Until the funds hit the account.
Yeah.
But, you have an LOI and you've got, you're hearing all the right things from the buyer. And so I remember I'm sitting in my office. I'm sick. You don't take days off, by the way, so it doesn't matter how sick you are. You're still working. And I'm in my office and I'm on the phone with the potential buyer, the head of M&A and corporate development at this company. And I get a text at the beginning of this call from my wife, and it's a screenshot of our bank account, and it's got a negative bank balance. And I'm like, this is great. Like, I'm talking about selling my company for millions of dollars. And on the same call, I get a screenshot with a negative bank balance. And it kind of like causes my heart to stop a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, dude, I got us in a tough situation here. Minutes later, the head of corp dev says, hey, I'm really sorry to inform you, but we're not going to be moving forward with this deal. We uncovered some things in due diligence, and we're really sorry, but we're not going to be moving forward, right? So
double whammy.
So I'm super sick. I get the negative bank balance text, and then I get told, like, we're not doing this deal. And I remember hanging up the phone and just feeling borderline suicidal, just like, dude, that's it. This is like the end of everything for my wife and my family. And I'm like, dude, how's my wife going to react to this? I still get like physically sick thinking about this. And so I walk out and I say, hey, I have some really bad news. And I just look like shit because I'm just like a wreck, And I say, they're not doing the deal. It's not happening. And like a stone cold killer, she looks at me and she goes, so what? And I'm like, no. So just so I'm super clear here, like the company that was going to buy us, like these things we've been talking about, it's not happening. She goes, no, I heard you. Like, damn, you know, so I just break down, and it's like, I think it's one of the most unfair advantages that I had as an entrepreneur, is having a wife that was just like ride or die. Like, this could all blow up and we can go live in a box under the bridge, or it could go really well. And either way, it doesn't matter. So what? So that's to frame up who my wife is and where this deal got to. Okay. Deal gets back on the rails, same company, closes with some conditions, right? So that's October of 2022. So I go from negative bank balance to a couple of months later, overnight, boom, rich, 30 years old, the whole deal, top of the mountain. I did it. I'm part of this like rare club that raises venture capital and is acquired by a public company. And it's like, it's every founder's dream. Like, I had made it. And 4 months later, I'm in Houston, Texas. And I jump on this elevator. I get to my hotel. It's Marriott. I jump on this elevator. Guy sticks his arm in the door. As the elevator doors are closing, he jumps on. It's just him and I just routinely say, "Hey man, how are you?" And he goes, you expect to hear the same response. "Fine. Well, you?" And this time was different. He said, I'm not doing well. This has been the hardest day of my life." He said, "I had to bury my 26-year-old son today."
Oh, geez.
Like, what do you say to that? This is a stranger. I don't know this man. Kind of in shock, speechless. He says he was a good kid. It wasn't drugs. It was a total fluke accident. And I'm just heartbroken. It's been the hardest day of my life. The doors open. Remember it vividly. Floor 10, doors open. I open up my arms to give this guy a hug. I still haven't said anything. He just says, he pulls back. He goes, "Hey man, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you have a family. I don't even know your name. But if you do have a family, just hold them really close, because you never know when it's going to be their last day." And I just say, "I'm so sorry." And he leaves and the doors close. And I'm just like, you know, here I am again. Like, yeah, I had made it in one aspect, but I'm like away from my family. I've been very absent. It kind of clicks with me in this moment. Like, dude, like, I don't even know my kids. Like, I don't even know my wife, right? And so exactly 1 month later, it's the biggest day of my professional life up to this point. I'm in New York City. We're getting ready to go on CNBC, at NASDAQ, on Wall Street, the whole deal. It's me and the CEO of the parent company and several members of the executive team. I wake up that morning. I've got a text message from my mother-in-law, I get a phone call from my mother-in-law. And it was 5:00 a.m. Arizona time. And so when I saw her name on my phone, I knew something was wrong. So instead of saying hello, I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Something's happened to Brooklyn," who's my wife, her daughter. "And we're not sure what's going on, but she's in an ambulance being rushed to the hospital. You should probably get home." So text my assistant, "Hey, I've got to figure out how to get home. What about the thing? Something's happened to my wife. I got to get home." You know, so like, if you've been to New York City, first of all, geographically, it's as far away from Arizona basically as anywhere in the country. Mm-hmm. It's also like a concrete jungle. So getting out of New York City at that time of day is a nightmare, right? So I'm in this Uber, I'm in stop and go traffic, and I'm having all these emotions, like what has happened? And I'm getting text message updates from my father-in-law, and they read, "Hey, just got to the hospital." And then a few minutes later, "Hey, they just rushed her into triage. They did an ultrasound." And then a few minutes later, they found 2 liters of blood in her abdomen. And I don't know if that's a lot of blood or a little blood. And I start doing research and realize 2 liters of blood is about half the blood in your body. And also 2 liters of blood means you can't function. You're going to die, right? Then I get a message that says the diagnosis. It says ruptured ectopic pregnancy. It's a picture of the whiteboard in the hospital. I researched that. I realized in the majority of cases when this happens in the home, it's lethal to the mother. They don't have a lot of time. Their tube bursts, it's connected to all their internal organs. They bleed out, they're dead. So I have the next 5 hours on this plane in a window seat, row 14, next to a hefty man. And I'm starting to flip through these stages of grief on the plane. And the next 4 hours of messages are they rushed her in for an emergency surgery, still in surgery, still in surgery, still in surgery.
As you're flying home, are you fully expecting to see your wife again? Or where was your mindset?
No, I'm hopeful, but we had delivered 3 children at this point, and the doctor is in the room. These procedures are 15 minutes once they're ready to go, right? So 4 hours in surgery to me was becoming increasingly more concerning. And I'm just hopeful that I'm going to get a text that says, hey, surgery's all done and she's good, and close call, right? But it wasn't that. As the plane's descending, I get a message that says something to the effect of, brace yourself. It doesn't look like she's going to make it. This is for my father-in-law. And so again, I don't know if you've ever had a moment where like your entire life flashes before your eyes, but these are the stages of grief that you're going through where you're seeing flashbacks, you're remembering specific moments. You're seeing into the future. What is this going to be like for my kids? How am I going to raise them? What am I going to do for them? I remember writing in my journal that she had to make it because God knows that our children have needs that I can't fulfill. Only she can fulfill. And, so the plane lands like you'd see in the movies. I'm sprinting through the airport, get my Uber, go to her room, and get to the second floor. And I realize audibly, the first thing I realize is the heart rate monitor is still going. And so I just felt like overwhelmed with gratitude for one more moment, right? And that one moment turns into one night, lots of miracles, another night, a third night. And she makes it through this experience. But going through that, there was many days where I thought I was going to be a widowed father, a single father. And I did years of self-reflection in a matter of days, just thinking about what my life is going to be like, and have I been a good husband, been a good father, are my priorities in line? And the conclusion I made is no to all of that. And something's got to change because life is fragile. And in an instant, it can be taken from you. It could be taken from you today or me today. Our wives could pass away today, our children today. And if you think about approaching every day and every moment with the people you care about the most from that lens, then it changes everything. It changes the way that you think about them, the way that you pray about them. It changes how you communicate. It changes the way you hug them and embrace them. It changes everything. And so, I think like the greatest message for anybody out there is, look, being an entrepreneur, being busy, being a man and earning for your family, it's all good, right? You have to do that. There's some necessities there, but not at the expense of potentially ruining relationships and being absent and totally unpresent for your family. So, and I say that to you as a newer entrepreneur building a business.
No, I appreciate that. And I do recognize some of those things that pop up. And it is interesting how these life events kind of shape the way and change the way that we perceive things.
Yeah.
I just went to a funeral in Houston this last week, a good mentor of mine, and it makes you think and it makes you wish one more conversation or one more check-in. And then, had another colleague, his mom had an emergency and thought she was not going to make it. And it just forces you to really change the way you live. Your hat says, this is your life, come alive for it. And it helps us change the way we live. You know, life is not about trying to just like work and this and that and the hustle and the bustle and the, you know, and then dying. It's about living today, because we don't know how much time we're going to have to live. As you mentioned, every day is a blessing. And so, you know, sometimes you just got to remind yourself that this is your life. Come alive for it. You got to live, and living means different things to different people. But, you know, when I say live, you know, for me, I'm talking specifically about, yes, making an impact in my company, supporting people that work with us. That's all part of it. But a huge chunk of that is at home. It's my wife, it's my kids, it's my parents, it's my nieces and nephews, and all those relationships. To me, that's life. So I appreciate you sharing that. There's a lot in there that we could dive into. I know we're running short on time. I can relate to a ton of that. Those near death type experiences, or things that really, you know, make you sit and have flashbacks and just regrets, and or just hope that I can just have a conversation with this person, you know, because I don't know what's going to happen. You know, don't wait for those moments. Have those conversations today. You know, if you got bad blood with somebody that's important to you, freaking fix it. You know, like, it's hard, but you got to find a way to fix it. So we learned a lot from you today, and I appreciate you coming in. You know, this is the Generational Health Podcast, as I mentioned before. And I'd just love to know, like, that phrase, when you hear generational health, I'd love to know, what does that mean to you?
I think for me, the first thing that stands out is how important it is to create and set the right example for your kids. You know, when you think about generations to come, I was at a cheer competition for my daughter recently, not even a competition. They cheered at a high school, whatever, halftime show. And there was a bunch of girls there, and there was a girl that was my daughter's age that was maybe 3 times her weight. So you're talking 7 years old, maybe 200 pounds. And I thought, man, how did that happen? And then I looked to my right and I saw her parents standing there. And it clicked. And I went, that's how that happens. And there is a 1-to-1 correlation between children and their parents. Like, it's very rare that you've got super fit parents and fat kids. Just doesn't really happen, right? And so the things that we do, the example we set, the exercise they're watching, the food that we eat, the food that we allow in the house, it all matters a lot. And we haven't always been perfect at this, but we're trying to set a better and better example for our kids, because health is wealth. It's the most important thing that we have, other than maybe relationships, right? And I think health is the foundational catalyst for success in all of the other areas of our life that matter. And so you should take it really seriously.
We often use the phrase building generational wealth, but without our health, we have nothing.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, thank you for coming in, man. Appreciate you being on here and being a mentor for me. I learned a lot from you, and I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Colby.